Howdy and welcome to the Strange West Podcast. This is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trent Tano. Bringing us in as always with their rendition of Eno Mariconis for a few dollars more is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. If you like your guitar slingers and you like your gunslingers, then head on over to MitchPolzak.com. That's Mitch, Polzak.com. In tonight's podcast, we could continue the Cowboy Vs Nazi action in Chapter 22 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trent Tano. If you want to get your Cowboys vs. Nazi on, then head on over to ParisHighNoon.com. Both paperback and ebook are available at ParisHighNoon.com. Paris High Noon t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other swag are available at Society6.com/Trentano. Both Paris High Noon and the Mustache t-shirts are available at Society6.com/Trentano. And as always, a big thank you to James K. Doyle for lending us his time in this talented podcast. He really does bring Paris High Noon alive. So without further ado, here is Chapter 22 of Paris High Noon.
Chapter 22, A Trap for the Heart. Jean and Moue sat in a cafe along the Rue des Saussets, casually eating croissants and sipping coffee under the shade of the awning while the summer sun marched lazily across the Paris skyline. Up the street around the corner, the SS Blackguards patrolled along the stone buildings of the former French Interior Ministry. Kugelwagons and motorcycles came and went like clockwork. "Beautiful day," Jean said. "It's nice to be on the other side of the counter for once." He was happier than a pig in mud and fell back to his old habit of mooning over Moue. Moue said nothing. It felt good to be in the new dress Jean bought her, as promised. But she still wore the red scarf. It hung low across her bosom. She watched the soldiers in black walk back and forth along the boulevard. Her lips trembled every time she tried to sip her coffee or nibble at her croissant. She was on the other side of the sign, away from Richard's stronghold on the left bank. Moue wondered if Richard would send out his crew to search for her. She'd seen what happened to those who crossed the Commissar. Once, a woman named Lana tried to stab Richard in the back. He had her tied to a chair and beaten. Moue didn't know if her crimes were true, but she confessed nonetheless. And when she was done, Richard took out his revolver and shot Lana in the head. Then he smiled at Moue, the gun smoking in his hand. So she kept watch on the Nazis and for Richard. They had been there for hours, and Moue would have screamed her head off if it weren't for Jean. He kept his eyes on the Germans, who were just a frog's jump away from them. In the light of the waning summer sun, she could see the change in them. They held a hardness that Moue never saw before, not even in Richard. Moue wished that Jean was Richard, in the way that she could be loved and secure. So she sat quietly, trying to figure out to have it both ways without paying for it. Jean sipped his coffee while scanning the street. He didn't think much of the Germans, but he didn't underestimate them either. If things went south, there wasn't a doubt in his mind that he could protect Moue. He tried his best to project the notion, but whenever he looked at her, Moue turned her face away. Jean might be pretty good with a gun, but with hearts he was still green. Finally, Jean took a chance and opened his mouth. "Look," he said, "we can't sit here all day and not say a word to each other. It wouldn't look right and people might notice." "Fine. What's your favorite color?" Moue asked. The question threw Jean and blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Yellow." "That's strange. What do you mean?" "I never would have pegged you for someone who liked yellow." Jean shrugged. "Now that I think about it, I kind of like blue." Moue gave a little laugh. "That's a far cry from yellow, don't you think?" "I guess." Moue smiled just a little. If there was one thing she was a professor at, it was making Jean feel insecure. "Well, what's your favorite color?" "Red." "I'm not surprised." Moue touched her red scarf out of reflex. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Mother liked red," Jean said. Most of the women customers liked red. I figured most women liked that color. Moue relaxed her hand around her throat. Your mother liked orange. That's not true. She laughed. The whole cafe was basically an orange orchard. It was so orange. Jean put out his hands on the table. A melancholy look came over his face. That was my father. He was the one who decorated the cafe and chose the color. Your father had no sense in decor, Moue said. Men who don't have a sense about themselves tend to be shiftless brutes with bad taste. What about you? Jean asked. His voice came down hard. My mother took you in when you had no one. Gave you a job and a place to stay when you had nothing. If anything, you're just as shiftless as me, my brother, or my father. Moue was stunned into silence. She looked away. Jean's face softened. Look, I'm sorry, but things have changed. Jean took Moue's hand and held it firm in his palm, like he would if he was holding his revolver. I've changed. I'm not that fat little boy you used to tease to pass the time, but I'll still care about you. I won't let anything happen to you, Moue. It occurred to Moue that maybe, if she confessed how Richard had sent her out to betray them all to the Nazis, if she said it right now, the boy in him might forgive her. She was afraid that if she waited any longer, the man he was becoming wouldn't forgive. Jean, Moue said. She started to tremble with the truth. Then her lips puckered up and her eyes went wide. Across the street she saw Richard Rouge sitting in the back of a Kugelwagen, sandwiched between two gunfighters in black. Riding shotgun was that SS officer who interrogated her, Hoff. They cruised by, giving Moue enough of a glance that she was afraid that they saw her. She ducked her head, covering her face with her hands. Jean gave a quick glance at the passing Kugelwagen. The SS didn't give them a second look. When he turned to Moue, he saw her head buried in her arms. It's okay, he said. They're gone, and I don't think they got a good look at us. Moue couldn't speak. She looked through her fingers at Jean and took a few deep breaths. Let's go, she whispered. What's wrong? Jean asked. Moue shook her head. Again she asked to go. Jean stood up from the table, looked around, and took Moue's hand. The two bandits walked down the cobblestone streets, taking most of the day zigzagging back to the hideout. When they approached the cemetery, Jean noticed the SS posse. He pulled Moue off the main street near a side alleyway fronted by junk shops and cafes. Stay here, Jean said. I'm going to scout ahead. Moue clung to Jean's arms. Please don't leave me. Jean took her hand off his arm and held it. Don't worry, I'll be back. Just stay here. Jean let go of her arm and took off down the street, leaving Moue alone with her thoughts. As much as she wanted to trust him, Jean had made a habit of leaving her exposed to danger. What if he got killed or captured? Who would protect her? Richard would never take her back. She'd had plenty of time to give up the location of the hideout. As far as Richard was concerned, she had double-crossed him. Her heart raced while her eyes saw enemies everywhere. Minutes stretched out and the alley closed in on her. Moue remembered Lana and what Richard did to her. Jean was not the boy he once was, but he had no real power, certainly not over Richard. It would be foolish, she decided, to imagine the guards could keep her safe. She tore off a corner of a Nazi poster claiming victory and friendship, took an eyeliner pencil from her purse, and wrote a message to Richard, telling him about the hideout in the catacombs near the old temple and Catfish's obsession with finding Hiccup. Moue gripped the note in her hand. She was still far from Richard's stronghold inside the left bank, but knowing Richard, he would have his crew out searching for her. Finally, she placed it under a trash can, drawing a triangle with the eyeliner on the brick above it to signal anyone from Richard's crew that a message was left. Moue let out a long breath. Her knees shook, and she leaned against the wall to get her strength back. After 10 minutes, Jean showed up, but to Moue it felt like 10 hours. Jean grabbed her arm. Come on, there's another entrance to the catacombs just up the street. Moue dragged her feet from the alley. She was tired and wanted out of this charade. Are you okay? Jean asked. She wiped a tear from her eye and took a few breaths to compose herself. I'm fine, she said. Jean led Moue out of the alley and down the street. Richard Rouge was sitting in his office when Hoff and about a dozen SS gunfighters rode up and knocked on his door. There was no use in trying to resist. Richard's crew was outclassed and outgunned. Come with me, was all Hoff said. Next thing Richard knew, he was standing in front of Black Bart, who was taller than the rumors. Where's the girl? Black Bart ordered more than asked. Richard stiffened up. Sir, Moue Boucher is under my command. Richard wasn't about to let Black Bart see all his cards. He didn't want to give up the fact that he had no idea where Moue was. His only hope was to bluff back. Richard stiffened up. Sir, Moue Boucher is under my command. Richard wasn't about to let Black Bart see all his cards. He didn't want to give up the fact that he had no idea where Moue was. His only hope was to bluff Black Bart. Richard thought he was that good. Where is she? Moue has infiltrated the old cowboy's gang. Richard started to sweat. Contact with her is very difficult. As soon as I hear from her, I can give you the location of the old cowboy's hideout. Since the Nazi-Soviet pact has been beneficial to both Germany and the Soviet Union, I have been ordered by Moscow to continue this consideration in France as well. Together we will defeat the Western capitalists, especially the warmonger Churchill. Black Bart walked around the desk and put his big hand on Richard's shoulder. Richard winced as Black Bart dug in his fingers and squeezed. You Reds are operating under German consideration. Don't you forget it. If I wanted to, I could stretch your necks from the gas lights along the Champs-Élysées. Where is the girl? Richard gritted his teeth. She hasn't been able to report, sir. The last time I saw her, she was with the boy. They disappeared into the catacombs around the Cimetière du Montparnasse. Black Bart squeezed gradually, forcing Richard to his knees. The stupid bitch was supposed to hang out a red scarf to signal when the boy showed up, Richard said, but she ran off with him. Black Bart turned to Hoff. Increase the patrols around the cemetery. Tell them to keep a lookout for a red scarf. Black Bart's attention returned to Richard. Go back to your office. As soon as you hear from the girl, you report it to me. Do you understand? Richard nodded. Sir, my ears are yours. That's good, because I don't have to tell you how we SS operate. As far as I'm concerned, you're just another damn Red, the same kind I used to fight in the streets, the kind I hunted back east. All Richard could do was nod his head again. Black Bart turned to Hoff. Make sure our comrade here gets home safely. Hoff snapped his heels and took Richard away. Black Bart sat at his desk, turning the new information over in his mind. The girl might be with the gang at this very moment, or Catfish could have figured out the betrayal and shot her. Black Bart didn't know if the old cowboy was that ruthless, but Catfish didn't get this long in years by being gullible. There was another worry. The Battle of Britain wasn't going the way the Luftwaffe had hoped. RAF fighters were attacking areas along the French side of the Channel, and at night they were dropping agents. What if Catfish linked up with British agents? They could give Le Band Sauvage the support they needed to ride roughshod all over occupied France. If that happened, Himmler would see that he had failed, and Hoff would be the one to put him down. Black Bart slammed his fists on the desk. He was tempted to put up posters all over Paris, calling Catfish out, and then the two of them could settle it, man to man, cowboy to cowboy. It was all Black Bart ever wanted. Dusk turned into night. The time may have passed, but Black Bart's thoughts were fixed on Catfish as he stared at the old wanted poster. There had to be a way to make Catfish come to him. But how? The thoughts rolled over in his mind until he was back where he started, only more bitter than angry. There was a knock at the door. Black Bart snapped out of his doldrums. He rubbed his face and straightened out his tunic. "Enter." Hoff came in. "Sir, a messenger from Richard Rouge has arrived." "He didn't come himself?" Hoff grinned. "I guess he's not eager to see you again." A large man walked into the office and stood in front of Black Bart. He stiffened up and stuck out his chest. "I have come with a message from Commissar Richard Rouge." Black Bart leaned forward. "If you have information on the old cowboy, then say it. I don't want your formalities." The man handed him Moue's note. Black Bart took it and read it. A rare smile crept across his face. He looked up. "Tell Richard I thank him for his cooperation. You can go now." Hoff peered over Black Bart's shoulder as Richard's man shut the door behind him. "What does it say?" "It says we got the old cowboy." Hoff snatched the note and read over it. "I knew it. They're in the catacombs near the cemetery. Most of the men are already there. We can storm the hideout and take them in." Black Bart shook his head. "The girl doesn't know the exact location. If we go in hard, Catfish could slip past us. We can get more men, go through every tunnel and passage. By the time we get there, they could be gone, and we'd be back to square one." Hoff dropped the note on the desk. "Then what do you propose we do, sir? Sit on our hands? We have actionable intelligence. Maybe you've gone soft chasing this old fart around. I've heard about you. You wanted to be a cowboy. Maybe you want him to get away." Black Bart gave a quick punch to Hoff's breadbasket. The SS lieutenant fell back against the wall. Black Bart grabbed him by the throat, clamping down on his windpipe. "You forget your place, young pup. There's a reason why I was sent after Catfish." Black Bart let go of his grip, but kept his eyes on Hoff. "You don't go chasing after cowboys because they always get away. Catfish is an expert at evading the law. He's spent decades doing it. You yourself have had that experience in Normandy." Hoff rubbed his throat. His eyes burned and his trigger finger itched. "Then how do you propose we catch him? Why did Catfish come back to Paris?" Hoff narrowed his eyes and tried to think. "Hiccup Nouveau," Black Bart said. "That broken old man. He's Catfish's partner. I should have seen it before. A cowboy would never leave a friend behind." "You think the old cowboy and his gang are going to storm the Place de Sauzet? That's suicide. We'll just have to make it easier. Share." Black Bart's top hand entered. "Sir?" "Radio Berlin. Tell them we are transferring the old cowboy's valet, Hiccup Nouveau, along with the other prisoners to Belsen on the next available train." Shear snapped a salute. "Yes, sir." "And one more thing," Black Bart said. "Make sure you transmit it in the open. Use the lines we know the British are listening in on." "Yes, sir." Sure, a good soldier followed orders even if he didn't fully understand them. But his eyebrows rose slightly. "Don't worry, old friend," Black Bart said. "Sometimes you have to show the corner of your cards to win the hand." Shear saluted and left the room. Black Bart turned to Hoff. His big hand hovered over the butt of the Luger. "We understand each other?" Hoff rubbed his throat, but his lips curled upwards. "Yes."
And welcome back to the Straight to West podcast. Once again, this is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trent Tano. Well, that about does it for tonight's Cowboys vs. Nazi action in Chapter 22 of Paris High Noon. Want to find out what happens next? Then head on over to ParisHighNoon.com. physical paperback and ebook are available at parishighnoon.com. Don't forget, you could also pick up Paris High Noon t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other swag at society6.com/Trentano. Both Paris High Noon and the Mustache t-shirts are available at society6.com/Trentano. And as always, a big thank you to James K. Doyle for lending us his time and his talent to the podcast. He really, truly does bring Paris High Noon alive. And sending us out, as always, with their rendition of Eno Mariconis for a few dollars more is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. Please check them out at mitchpolzak.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy trails.